top-secret document shows British officers were encouraged to weigh up how much they torture prisoners, depending on how much information they could get. Discontent in Israel is showing no sign of abating, with protesters planning a third weekend of social protests. One Tel Aviv street has already been renamed by some as Tahrir Square, which of course was the site in Egypt's uprising. And as RT's Paula Slier reports, the number of protesters is steadily on the rise.
Later today, Saturday, tens of thousands of protesters will be taking to the streets here in Tel Aviv, as well as in several other cities around the country, where they'll be holding mass rallies against the government. They're hoping to top the 150,000 nationwide who took to the streets last weekend. This is the third Saturday in a row that protests are being held. They are united under the banner, "The government has abandoned the people." And the central message coming from organizers is that the people are taking the country back. Now, the plan tonight is for demonstrators to march from Rothschild Boulevard, where for the better part of 3 weeks a tent city has been established. Their final destination is not far from here at the Kiryat Defense Compound, and there they'll be holding a mass rally presenting a number of demands on the government. There'll be several speakers, several popular singers also present. In the last week, there have been a number of smaller demonstrations that have been held. For several hours earlier this week, taxi drivers blocked off a number of main roads. They were protesting against the high cost of diesel. There was also another protest among teachers, university professors and students, and they were united under the banner "Free Education for All." And another demonstration just yesterday where hundreds of parents with strollers took to the streets, and they were protesting against the rising costs and the high costs of having children here in Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been surprised by the massive support for these demonstrations, and his government is still struggling in terms of how to deal with them. Essentially, what you can hear some people here in Israel saying is that Netanyahu was so obsessed with gathering intelligence for the flotilla from the Mediterranean that he missed the opportunity to see what was happening here right under his eyes. Paula Slier, RT, Tel Aviv.
And Knesset member Daniel Ben-Simon says Prime Minister Netanyahu doesn't realize the protests are rooted in public rage and not from political rivals.
People here are yelling, are shouting, are sleeping in the street. I'm talking about tens of thousands. You won't see the police shooting or beating the protesters. It's very polite. It's very strong, but still very polite as to how to change the policy of the government and how to have a better life in Israel. For the time being, there have not been any wounded since the last three weeks. I don't think it will be different in the coming weeks. This is a strike of Israeli professionals. It's not of unemployed people. We have almost no unemployment, but you do everything and still you cannot have a decent life. This demonstration has no right-wing or left-wing views. It is most of the mainstream Israelis who feel so bad about how they live, and they go to the street like tonight and maybe next week. And I don't think Mr. Netanyahu gets the right view of these demonstrations. He thinks that political parties are behind it, and he's wrong.
Well, on our website, I'll get more reports right from the epicenter of the demonstrations in Israel. Activists and journalists say with hardly any global media attention, the government can easily ignore the pressure to improve living standards. More on this story, of course, at rt.com.